Thursday, August 30th, 2018, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I want to warn people about controlled opposition. I want to talk a little bit about the composition of gold coins and what you have to look for if you're buying gold coins. So what about controlled opposition? Well, I listened to an interview, it was yesterday, published a couple of days ago, but I listened to it yesterday. Greg Hunter interviewed Danielle DiMartino Booth. The title looks really good. Gold is the ultimate hiding place. Danielle DiMartino Booth, in my opinion, is controlled opposition. She's working with the Fed, with the people at the Fed. She's written a book called Fed Up. At the end of the day, she still thinks the Federal Reserve is a necessary institution. And I'll go over the interview and why I think you need to watch out for these kind of people, and why until the United States and every other country for that matter gets rid of central banks, we'll never be free. We'll never have individual freedom. We'll never have free markets. We'll never be free of the debt noose around our neck. I think Greg Hunter, I love Greg Hunter and his interviews, but in this case, maybe he wants to keep his enemies close. I don't know, but don't understand why he interviews Danielle DiMartino Booth. I don't think she's fighting the cause, so to speak. And I'll talk about how you can learn about central banks, what books you should look at as well, and read about the nature of the Federal Reserve and what it really does. And I will also play the clip where she actually says that the current Fed chairman is a great guy. He's doing this for the American public. And I had to laugh when she said that. But before that, of course, and before I go through the coins, let's go see what the markets are doing this morning. So it's just before 9 a.m. London. Spot gold is 1203.50. It's down about $3. The range has been 1200 to 1208. Silver still fairly weak, 1468, down 7 or 0.5%. So yeah, if you want the gold market, precious metals, interest rates to keep being suppressed and taken away from the system, listen to Danielle DiMartino Booth. Well, anyway, let's keep going. Surprisingly, the Dow Jones future is down today. Wow, it's down 0.25%. It's down 66, 26,060. S&P is down 5 points, 2908. And the Nasdaq is down 12. Nasdaq 100 future. It's down at 64.47. Nasdaq 100. The pound yesterday rallied quite a bit, rallied almost 1%. It's back up above 130. It's at 130.25. I think some minister, I think it was the Brexit minister, spoke in Parliament. I'm not really sure what he said. You know, I think it's a little bit a waste of time to keep listening to these guys. But the pound rebounded. Longer term, of course, all the fiat monies are cursed. So the pound right now is rebounded a little bit against the dollar, but it's still fiat money. The euro, 117.03, that's pretty much unchanged. Still a bit firmer from yesterday. I think we were in 116.60 yesterday morning. And the dollar is at 111.62, a little weaker against the yen. Chinese yuan, the dollar is up 0.25% against the yuan at 684. Crude oil is creeping up again. We're almost at $70. The WTI, 69.66. So that's jumped up. It's annoying, that crude oil, especially for the powers that be. I think it doesn't want to go down. Maybe the Iran situation doesn't help, but emerging market currencies, well, the Turkish lira remains quite weak. The dollar right now is at 6.53. up another 1.2%. Brazilian real was fairly weak yesterday, but kind of stabilized. It closed around 4.11. So that's the markets. Before I go further about Danielle DiMartino Booth, the Fed, gold coins, I like to thank again all the subscribers that contribute donations to the channel, that buy the Monaco 64 merchandise in the Monaco 64 store. All the details are below in the description. And today, talking about this interview about Danielle DiMartino Booth and the Fed, I found it appropriate to be drinking my coffee off the End the Fed mug, which is in that Monaco 64 store. So I'll play here what she said about the Fed, some Fed chairmen, and Jay Powell. I'll play it right now so you can listen to it.
Strengthen the dollar even more.
Greg, William McChesney Martin was the greatest Federal Reserve chair in its 104-year history, and he had a good habit of giving the presidents under whom he served the Heisman. I suspect Jay Powell's going to do the same exact thing. He is the most independent Fed chair that we have had in over 30 years, and I think that he's going to raise interest rates regardless of what is happening in politics. He went off to Jackson Hole, gave a seminal speech recently, and he did not even make mention of politics and or the president strong-arming him. That is the kind of person who he is. He is independent, he is independently wealthy, and he has absolutely no reason to be running the Federal Reserve unless he simply wants to serve his country. And serving your country means that you don't kowtow to political pressure.
Well, there you go. That's what made me laugh. That he's serving his country. The Federal Reserve was not created to serve the United States and the public. It was created to serve the bankers and the politicians. I mean, read What Has Government Done to Our Money by Murray Rothbard. Read The Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins. Read one of the other classics, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, where he talks about how the bankers went down to Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia in 1910 in a secret private train car where they used, they didn't use surnames to identify themselves. They kept it secret, and the biggest, the richest men in the world, representatives of the most richest men in the world, met there. Morgan, Warburg, Schiff, Kuhn Loeb, they all met. They all met at Jekyll Island and drew up the plan for the, private public Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve, as some have said, is not any more federal than Federal Express, and it doesn't have any reserves. So let's look at independently wealthy Jerome Powell. Let's see who he worked for. Okay, so from 1984 to 1990, Powell worked for Dillon Read & Co., an investment bank, Wall Street. Okay. The other thing that really caught my attention about Jay Powell, or Jerome Powell, is that from 1997 to 2005, Powell was a partner at the Carlyle Group, where he founded and led industrial group within the Carlyle U.S. buyout fund, right? It's a private equity group. The Carlyle Group is like the most connected private equity group. The Bushes are behind it. John Major, the former Prime Minister of the UK, when he retired, he became a member of the Carlyle Group. He backed the war, the first war in Iraq that Papa Bush engineered. It was founded in 1987 in Washington, D.C. So it's a creature of Washington, D.C. and Wall Street. Let's see, in documentaries, Carlyle has been profiled in two notable documentaries, Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11 and William Carroll's The World According to Bush. In Fahrenheit 9/11, Moore makes 9 allegations concerning the Carlyle Group. Moore focused on Carlyle's connection with George Herbert Walker Bush and his Secretary of State James Baker, both of whom had at times served as advisors to the firm. In The World According to Bush, Carroll interviewed Frank Carlucci. Yeah, Frank Carlucci, he was a I think, Secretary of Defense under Bush the first, and he became, I think, the head of the Carlyle Group. So he interviewed Frank Carlucci to discuss the presence of Shafiq bin Laden, Osama bin Laden's estranged brother, at Carlyle's annual investor conference while the September 11 attacks were occurring. So that's the kind of firm Carlyle Group is, and Jay Powell worked for that firm from 1997 to 2005, 8 years for the Carlyle Group. So to say that he's serving the public is quite a stretch, I would say. And as a lot of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson warned about private banks, corporations. Andrew Jackson, of course, did not renew the charter of the Second Bank of the United States in 1837 or thereabouts. And then until 1913, the U.S. did very well without a central bank. And also the other book I recommend is The War on Gold by Anthony Sutton. And he says, and he puts here in the beginning of chapter 1, no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payments of debts. The Constitution of the United States, Article 1, Section 10. So I'm sorry to say this. Danielle DiMartino Booth is not a contrarian. She does not want the best for the public. She's just like trying to, she's like a PR person for the Federal Reserve. Of course, she's criticizing the Fed, but you have to, I guess, if you want to lure the public in and think that you are opposition. But in the end of the day, the only opposition, the true opposition is and the Fed and Ron Paul and people like that. And even though I don't live in the United States, you might ask why you're so concerned about the Fed. Well, because there's a note saying when the United States sneezes, the whole world catches a cold, or whatever the saying is. And whatever the U.S. does will lead the way. So it's important that the U.S. get rid of the central bank and go back to sound constitutional money where the public is in charge of the money, not the bankers. You can have bankers, but they shouldn't be in charge of the money. It's too important for them to be in charge of. So coins, I got a few, I got a email from one of the viewers, or a message saying she bought a gold eagle. You know, the bullion coin of the United States, and she said, "Oh, it looked quite yellow. It didn't look that yellowish, and it looked more like copper." And I said to her, I replied, and I said, you know, most of the low gold coins, especially the ones that circulated before, they have some kind of alloy to harden it, because 999 gold is too soft and brittle, and it damages. So, for example, I have here a 1 ounce $50. It's not a circulating coin. It's from what year is it from? I think 1991. I'm not sure, but yeah. So that's 90% gold and 10% copper. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have an ounce of gold. It does have an ounce of gold, but it does have the copper in it to make it harder. And it looks a bit, reddish, copperish. It doesn't look as yellow as the Buffalo, which is 999. And the Buffalo was the first U.S. minted coin that was 999. The U.S. Mint always minted 90% coins. I think the Buffalo came out in 2007. They might have more coins now. There are 999. And if you do have the 999 coins, you not need to make sure you keep them safe. I keep them safe in a little plastic pouch, and I don't touch it too much. If you drop it, it dents very easily. This one won't dent as easily. And then you have the Krugerrand, which is one of the most famous bullion coins. And that's also, that's 916, 22 karat, and that's got copper in it. And what the copper does is it makes it harder and more durable, because the soft gold is very soft. And then you have also the double eagle. These used to circulate. These are not bullion coins. This is from 1877, and it's the same composition, 90% gold and 10% copper to make it harder. And then you have the sovereign, which is 22 karat, like the Krugerrand. So yeah, that's the story about the gold coins. Yeah, you can buy the 999, but you just got to make sure you keep good care of it. So we need to end the Fed. The Fed has made it possible for the US government to create huge amounts of debt and lumber it on the public. It's been made possible for government to get bigger and Washington, D.C. to grow like a mushroom or a parasite or a giant squid. So we need to be careful of who we listen to in the anti-Fed camp. I don't think Miss DiMartino Booth is anti-Fed, and she's admitted it. She just wants to reform the Fed, and that's not going to do any good. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter. I'll talk to you later. Take care.